welcome. Can I call you Ant or Anthony?
You can call me Ant. Call me whatever you want.
Well, we're friends now, so I'll call you Ant if that's okay. Ant, welcome. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
You have a really interesting background and you're doing some of the coolest trailer editing and storytelling like imaginable. So of course there's stuff that I want to cover. But yeah, let's just get into it and let's take it back to the beginning. So tell me about young Ant. What were you like in school? What were you interested in? I'd love a little bit of an intro.
So young Ant he's the second born son, and that often means that I was the attention seeker of the family. And from that then led to this sense of like extreme people pleasing and wanting to entertain people, making people laugh, making people cry. And that sort of followed me throughout my whole life. So at school, I would be the one who would just want to jump around and play and like make people smile. And then that led to me wanting to become an actor. So then I went into drama school, and then that went further, and then I started being in actual shows. And so it's always been something that's been a part of me. And even now, when I think it was around GCSE time, and I was doing a performance on stage, and just as I was about to go out, I got this overwhelming feeling of stage fright.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. And if a therapist was to dissect me now, they would probably say I was, because it's around that sort of time when you're figuring yourself out. You're also trying to be a little bit cooler to some of your mates and trying to fit in and all this sort of thing. And I was about to go out on stage and I was terrified, and I forced myself to do it. And I remember finishing that performance and being like, I'm never going to go out on stage again. And even then, this desire and this need to entertain people and to tell stories and create emotions within others was still just burning up inside me. And I got quite lucky in the sense that I was watching a lot of films at the time, and I was watching the behind the scenes of films, and I fell in love with how people made those stories and how they brought everything to life, which then led to doing media studies at school, and then which then led to doing film production at university, which then led to starting a company, which then led to working for an agency that specialized in film and TV shows, which then led to the Diary of a CEO and ultimately what I create today.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I heard you say on a podcast that you love giving people characters to go on a journey with. And I thought that was really profound, because I'm really interested in how we consume social media and how we consume content as a whole. Yeah. And I've noticed in my own mind that I'm trying to actually consume less content, and I'm trying to do more. Like if I want to watch something, I will watch a movie. I will listen to a podcast like The Diary of a CEO, or Paul Brunson's one. As I said, I love that too.
Legend.
He's a legend. But, you know, it is kind of committing to that character and that story. And that's why I think podcasting is so kind of becoming so big and is such a profound thing, and it is having such traction now, and it's like growing and evolving so much. But what is happening as well on social media is that there's just this quick kind of these quick fixes and there's no story, and that's a problem. Like it's a problem in young people, there's no actual kind of storyline. So what you have done, so for the listeners who maybe don't know you, you're the trailer director at the Diary of a CEO, and you are just like absolutely incredible at what you do. Like your trailers are on another level of excellent. And like I fully believe that you are a massive part of why the podcast is so successful. And I think I love what you do, where you kind of, I know you guys call the Diary of a CEO a show now, which I think is really interesting, and I'd love to talk to you about that in a second. But I love the way you bring, like, it's like a movie trailer. So talk us through the process. Like when you get the raw file, you get the file from Stephen. It's like, this is the podcast from the beginning to the end. Tell me from the beginning, what do you do from there to turn it into this incredible trailer that very often goes viral?
Every single trailer starts from a blank piece of paper, and it all comes back down to this idea of, as humans, it's innate in us to not only tell stories but to listen to stories. That's how we used to communicate. Like when you think about like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the way people would gather would be to sit around the fire and tell stories. And then the way people would leave their mark on history would to become part of a story, or to tell a story about themselves, or they'll start drawing on walls and start doing paintings. And this idea that if you can take an audience on this narrative journey filled with a multitude of emotions, in my eyes, that is the key to creating engaging content. And it's something that's been going on for years and years and years and years and years. I always find it really interesting when people talk about what I've done as like this pioneering, almost never been done before aspect of the industry. And in a lot of ways what they mean is specifically in podcasting, but trailers have been around for years, and the reason why they work so well is because they just give little insights into stories. And obviously then I then play off certain psychological tricks and manipulation techniques and all these little aspects which go into a trailer to make it so impactful. But at the core of every trailer is a narrative, and that's because that's what people most relate to. The most powerful moments in our history and in our past and what will be in our future will come down to the story that's told about it. That's how people remember things. That's how people buy things. That's how people allow themselves to connect with other humans, is through the power of stories. And so with that in mind, every single trailer has to have a powerful story that goes from A to B to C. And if that story's not in its very core, in my eyes, the trailer will never work. It's essentially a mismatch of sound bites and clips that's just been put together to try and sell a product. But if you want to leave something that has this lasting effect on people, that makes people want to talk, that wants to provoke this emotion, for me it all comes down to that story. So that's the first task, and it's a big task because often the podcast can range from anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. And so the big challenge I've got is, how do you condense this story into 90 seconds? That's the max that I've got. How can I do that? And that's where I guess a love of Disney comes in, where my love for feature films have come in, how my love for writing short stories as a kid has come in. That combined with me reading as many books about the human psychology and about the amygdala comes in. All of these things just start like piecing together. And you then end up ultimately with this lovely flow of emotions, going from the start to the end. And always leaving the audience wanting more by the end of it.
I'm always wanting more, even when I see a guest, I'm like, I probably won't be interested in that. By the end of the trailer, I'm like, what is it? You guys always say like, comment like flask. That's the first word that came to my head. And we'll send you the episode. I'm like, oh my God, it's so smart. But like, because they're so captivating. And you said something earlier while we were having our hot chocolate together, about, how you listen to music. You listen to the music that is relevant to the story.
Yes.
When you're editing. Please talk me through that process. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think with anything you're doing as a company, if you're trying to sell to someone, if you're trying to sell a product or an experience or a service, it often feels like you need to have that emotional connection to that product, to that service that you're giving away, right? So for me, if I want someone to feel ecstatic, then I have to feel ecstatic whilst I'm making it, because if I'm struggling to make me feel anything, how the hell am I going to make anyone else feel anything? And so when we have different guests on, we'll have I sort of see everything from a film lens, because that's how my brain works. I see everything as like feature films, and so I'll have genres. So every guest for me fits into a different type of genre. Now, genres can always mix match. So you can have horror and rom-com together. You can have comedy and action, as often the way is, which then gets categorized as subgenres, right?
Okay.
So, but it all starts with that first genre. So every guest I have, it accounts to a genre. And
you just, I don't mean to jump in there now, but do you just decide that based on how you feel having listened to the episode?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So it's based on that. It's based on the research that I've done on the guest. It's based on what their audience is like as well, because obviously you wanna feed to our Doat community, but then you also want to entice the guest community in as well, and as well as open it up to everyone else. And I think humans can then make a strong decision based on the genre. So because a lot of people will often have like 4 or 5 different genres that they love, that they will always gravitate towards. And so once I've decided that genre, I'll then listen to a playlist specific to that genre as I'm reading the entire episode.
Okay.
And then that will then feed into how I make the trailer, because if a good example is we had Andrew Bustamante on, who's an former CIA spy.
Okay.
And he was telling his story on how he was given a briefing to go undercover to source intelligence about an enemy country, as well as a mole that had infiltrated the CIA.
Yeah.
And so when I was reading that, in my head, I was like, okay, this sounds a little bit like this could be this Netflix true crime, like conspiracy style documentary trailer. And so whilst I was reading the notes and the transcript, I started playing that sort of music. So it's that tense, and it would build up, and then it would stop, and then it would get faster. There'll be slower moments. And it's sort of connect those dots in my brain, which is if I'm reading something and then if I've got the music playing in the background, if I can feel my heart racing when I'm reading a certain part, I'm like, okay, there's a moment here that I can probably put into the trailer and have the audience feel that exact same emotion. And so it's just like those tiny little tricks are the things that I sort of do to try and put myself in the seat of hopefully the millions of people who are going to sit down and watch the trailer. If I invest fully in the experience and provoke the emotions that I can, then it just gives me such a higher likelihood of provoking emotions in the audience that we're distributing it to.
Yeah. Music to me is such a fundamental part of like not only my life, but when I engage with content. And I think that's as well another factor to your trailers being so good is how you connect the music just at the right moment, because you're making people really feel something. I saw this YouTube video the other day. I was trying to research for something else that I'm doing, this workshop that I was hosting, and it was about how over 90% of our buying decisions are made by emotion.
Yeah.
They're emotional. And that just blew my mind. And it just made me think about everything that I do and all the content that I engage with, because I've only really been doing marketing for just over a year now, but I've always loved it. I've always been a very natural marketer, and I've always read books about it. And I think when you understand human beings and how they engage with things and how to make people feel something, you can make great content. And I think that's it. And we were also talking about, people trying to chase virality. And that's something I'd love to talk about as well, which is it's like an addiction. Just chasing virality is an addiction. But then if you are creating content that makes people feel something, like that's what you want to do. It makes people engage. So talk to me about when people come to you and say like, oh, how do I go viral? Like, what's your response to that? Because I'm sure that happens all the time.
It happens a lot. And I used to answer it. And I used to be like, you got to play to the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that creates the emotions, which then leads to the decision making. And elements of that is all true. Where I went wrong was the advice I was given is the same, but for a different question. So if I unpack that a little bit, I've reframed my opinion on this idea of going viral. And for me, I think if someone's marketing goal, if their strategy is to go viral, I think you need to take a step back and rethink your strategy.
Yeah.
For me, the idea of going viral, I do see it as this double-edged sword, which could very likely lead to an addiction. In my eyes, it's very similar. It's almost like junk food, and it's almost like having alcohol. It's if you create a piece of content and the sole aim is to go viral and get millions and millions of views, it doesn't say anything about your business. It doesn't say anything about you. It may not even represent the community that you're bringing in.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just an end goal, which ultimately you don't have 100% ownership over.
Yeah.
You know, you could create something that's amazing and it might not go viral. You can do all the right things and it might not go viral just because of like the way algorithms work, or it just might not hit it might just not hit at the right moment. A lot of people see virality as a mark of success. It's not. It's just I can't even really explain it in that sense, other than for me, it's just something that kicks something off in your brain that gives you like this dopamine hit of excitement.
Yes.
Which very likely, like with alcohol, like with junk food, will come crashing down soon. And then what happens is, I now need to find another viral moment. And you will then kick yourself when you don't get that viral moment. And you will try everything you can to try and get more viral.
Yeah.
And then what often, as I've seen a lot of marketing teams do in this pursuit of going viral, they start giving up the core foundations of what that company is, of what that brand is. They start ignoring the community that they're building because they're so fixated on doing certain tricks and certain techniques or following certain trends to make them go viral, because in their eyes, if millions of people see me, millions of people are going to buy my service.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
It doesn't work like that.
No.
Yeah.
And in my eyes, what I've always found, like you said, emotion is buying power. If you can provoke emotion in someone, they're more likely then to make a decision that can, like, whether it's buying a service or buying a product, the emotion is going to do that, not going viral. And so I sort of try and reframe how I answer that question now, and I sort of try and swerve people away from the sole goal of going viral.
Yeah.
Viral is a result of something. It shouldn't be the goal. It should almost just be like a subpar result of building a community, which I think is so much more important. You know, Grace Andrews, who I worked with for 3.5 years, is the queen of social, the queen of brand. Like, I absolutely love her, and her big thing is community. And she's right, because the community that we've built with DOAC is an incredible community. You know, they support you, they tune in, they want to learn, they embody everything the Diary of a CEO is. And they're the ones that I want to entertain. They're the ones who deserve to be entertained and to have everything that they need from the podcast, because they're the ones that are tuning in, and they're the ones that have stuck around and they want to keep growing with us. And so I do think this idea of going viral is basically this feed of this dopamine hit, and you just want that dopamine all the time, and when you don't get it, that's when the crash happens, and then that's when a whole host of problems start happening thereafter.
Well, it's, as you said before, like, you're chasing the wrong thing, and it's a very surface level goal to have, going viral. And you mentioned as well community, and I've actually watched Grace's, I know she's gone off and now she's doing her own thing. I watched her vlog, her vlog, whatever it's called, on YouTube. It's great. So fair play, like, it's just incredible. And also, I was definitely one of the OG DOAC members, I would like to say. And I actually think if it wasn't for the Diary of a CEO, I don't think I would have my own business today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've really reflected on it, because I think for someone like me, I loved podcasts, but I'm really particular about the sound of someone's voice, about how they ask questions. I don't like to be shouted at or sold to or told, you have to do this, you have to do that. Like, the amount of stuff these days on the news feeds, people just like all this like sponsored shite. I'm just not about it. I absolutely hate that type of content. And I think Stephen has a really nice tone of voice, and obviously the trailers were the main thing that brought me into the Diary of a CEO.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, no, it's just these conversations. And I think, you know, we spoke earlier about both not maybe being super academic. And I had this limiting belief growing up that I would never be able to be an entrepreneur because I wasn't good at school. And when I initially had heard Stephen's story about this like vending machine that he set up at his school, and then he was like a dropout, and then he worked at this call center, and I was like, that kind of sounds really similar to my path. And I think these conversations, like, because I remember getting into it maybe in 2020, 2021, was that when it kind of started to get traction and get quite a bit of a following, and the guests got really good. And I remember, just some of the early days, and I was like, this is really good, and this is really speaking to my soul in a way. And it was just like being able to listen to these really inspiring conversations. And I think with anything, when it comes to creating content, creating a podcast, whatever that is, written content, LinkedIn posts, and we were talking about this before, you know, it's like you want to leave people with something good. You want to leave people with value. And I think the community that you've built now is so strong because you've been consistent, because you've given so much value. There is so much value in these podcasts. And I put it on. My whole family now listens to the Diary of a CEO. My sister and me, she's like, did you watch that latest episode? I'm like, yeah, girl. I mean, I'm like way ahead of you, but now I'm like way behind because of Paul Brunson. Always joking. Well, kind of. Yeah, so it's just like, I think when you create that much value with people consistently over time, then when it comes to like, you send out an email, it's like, oh, sign up, subscribe to my top 1%, whatever, private members club or whatever it looks like, or buy the merch or whatever. People are going to buy it because they've been following you guys for years, probably, like me. And they've already been so deeply impacted. And if you're giving that much value to people across a long period of time, they are going to then buy when you have something to sell. And I think people get that wrong, and that's when they're chasing virality.
100%. I think a lot of, you've got to respect people. I know it sounds a weird thing to say. You would think, of course you got to respect. But some people just, their brands just don't respect them. Like, even with us, when we create a trailer, my sole goal is to entertain as many people and to take them on this emotional journey in a bid to make them watch the full length podcast. Yeah. So obviously I do have to have a goal, which is to entice people in. You know, I'm not gonna lie and pretend, no, I just like creating content that goes out there. If people want to click, they can. I am selling the podcast to you. That's my job, but I have to do that. But you can still do it with a level of respect. And so it's all about this sort of like this marriage of all these different tricks and techniques that you can use when you're creating content in order to do so. And so like a big thing for us is, I know from like everything I've read, I know humans have this huge flaw in them, which is they have to know the answer to everything. They cannot stand not knowing the answer unless they go off on like some sort of retreat and they can sort of like get it out of their system somehow. It's in us. It's in us. And you see it all the time. You know, if someone says something and we don't understand, we'll have to search it up. We have to look at, or we argue until we get the answer that we can't just let things go. And so that's where the cliffhangers would come into the trailers, because it's this idea of, if you want to know the answer to the top 5 things that are going to change your life forever, I'm not going to tell you in the trailer, because then you won't have to watch the episode. Yes. And so that's why that's a huge part. Now, the respect to the audience is because it's not, obviously I am trying to sell, but I don't want it to be like I'm giving you nothing and I expect you to go onto this episode. Because I want to respect the audience, we do something called a moment of value. Now, a moment of value is we will give you at least one useful piece of advice or a quote or something that you could, if you didn't watch the episode, you can still take that and implement it as part of your life if you wanted. Yeah. For a more positive experience. And so, for example, if we have a health expert on, we might, and there's 6 topics, we might give away 2, 3 of those topics. The other 3, you have to go to the episode. So it's like this balancing act of like, we're going to tell you some information because we have a respect for you. We want you to learn something, even in this content. In all of our content, we don't want it to just be nah. Like, there's no reason not to watch it, and there's no reason not to want it. We want to make you watch it, learn something, engage with it, love it, feel entertained with it. I want you to do all of this sort of stuff. And so the way I'll do that is offering a moment of value so you can learn something. And the hope is what I'm essentially saying to the viewer is, look, we're giving you this. If you trust us now to listen and spend the next 2 to 3 hours of your time, valuable time, to watch this, you will learn even more. And so that's where I think that respect comes in. And it's very often enough like the same with story. And again, this is the idea of bringing emotions and playing with different emotions in, is I want to respect the audience in a sense that I don't want them to just feel flat. You know, we have X amount of hours in our day to do what we want to do, to watch what we want to watch. And I think there's a lot of, can I swear?
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit on social media. Let's be honest. There's a lot of garbage that just doesn't benefit us at all.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it, in my eyes, it can be emotionally flat, or it just doesn't add anything. There's no substance there. And so creating emotion within a trailer and creating multiple emotions just allows people for 90 seconds in a busy day to have that escapism
yeah.
from the reality that they're in,
yeah,
and just sort of get a little bit lost and be able to feel different emotions and go on this narrative journey just for 90 seconds of their day. Again, that's sort of like another respect that I want to give to the audience. And that's the reason why people used to go to the cinema all the time, is to escape the reality of their lives and go into this new world. And so we want to combine all these different elements within the content we create, because we value community so much, and because we want to show that content can be engaging, that you can learn from it, and you can also be entertained from it. It doesn't have to be mind numbing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said earlier was so interesting, and I love just about storytelling, like, because I mean, I'm Irish, as you know, and that's a big part of our culture, is storytelling, and storytelling Oscuelga, which is in Irish. And I didn't appreciate it enough when I was younger, but you know, what's the word for, anyway, I'm going to be like absolutely bashed to shit now because I don't remember this word, but there's a type of Irish storyteller. Is it, anyway, I'll find the word, put it in the description, who storytells in Irish. And it's such a massive part of our culture. And just like you said, so many different cultures where, you know, it is how we communicated with each other. Even when you think about different religions and the scriptures and the stories that people leave. And that's another thing, like, I'm not religious, but like, I used to love religion in school because I used to love the stories that were told about all the different things that happened back in the day. And I think we're really missing that at the moment, which is why I think what you're doing is so cool. And with social media, again, it's this, like, our attention is so short, and there's a lot of this kind of, it's just like reel upon reel of just shite, like actual shite. It's either shite or something that's trending, or someone trying to sell you something, some bro who's like, you have to get this, like blah blah, or else you're never going to be successful in your business. And I'm like, please get off my newsfeed. I just cannot. But I am noticing, especially with the rise of AI and a lot of this just general kind of, you know, people are obviously using AI to write their content, okay? And it's really obvious. But that will get bigger and bigger, and more and more people will start using it to generate content, 100%. Fine. But when you can really connect to the human, and when you can really tell amazing stories, I think that is what is truly going to make people stand out, especially when it comes to content creation. I'd love to understand. So for someone like me, my podcast is like, let's say, a year old. I'm at the moment basically doing it for 2 reasons: brand awareness, and because I just love doing it. I just love interviewing great people. Okay. But I'm still super early. I haven't even got any sponsors yet because I'm just doing it more like a hobby right now. Obviously it does help my business because it's also aligned to my purpose of my business. The Diary of a CEO is probably one of the reasons I actually went on that journey and decided to do it. But it's a thing that is actually surprisingly not that difficult, but there's just like little bits and pieces that can be so overwhelming for a lot of people. So for people who are maybe considering starting a podcast or at early stages of their journey like me, what advice would you give to those people about storytelling or about making something that is going to move people?
Ultimately, everyone has to start from scratch. And we get this a lot, where even people will send me questions, ask me questions, and be like, well, it's easy for Steve and the Diary of a CEO to become the fastest growing podcast globally, because he's a multimillionaire who can just throw loads of money at it. Things. But that's not like, that's true in a black and white sense. But there's so much what Steve done. I mean, even before I joined, all the tiny little details that he was doing, which then led to growing the team. The only reason why I got the position I've got is because he grew it enough that warranted enough money to hire me in. The reason why now I have a team is because we've then grown it even further to bring in more money to bring the team. So it didn't start with this multi-million-pound project. And what the Diary of a CEO has done well is it's focused so much on the core basics. It's done a few things well. It focused on the core basics, but it out-cared than anyone else. And that's something that I feel very deep within me, is that if I make a trailer, it will not go out unless I'm 100% happy with it.
Okay.
Now, a trailer has to go out. Well, maybe it doesn't. But a trailer, we've never been in that situation before. But a trailer has to go out. I can't release it until I'm 100% happy with it. That means between the time I start and the time I finish it, I have to get it to a place where I'm 100% happy with it. And I've now done 360 odd trailers, nearing on 400. I don't know how many I've done now. And every single one of them, I can safely say I love.
Okay.
And there's not things I wouldn't change about it.
Okay.
But I'm proud of those trailers at the time, and I've taken the lessons from those trailers and I've implemented them into the future trailers, and I'm constantly evolving them and like doing these tiny little tweaks. But I still love every single trailer that I've made. And it's because I will not stop until I find the perfect track. I will not stop until the story makes perfect sense. Even if it means, like, there's times when I will scroll through, I'll type in the word but on my 2-hour long timeline, and I will scroll through. Sometimes there's about maybe 455 buts, and I will scroll through every single but until I find the perfect way they say but, which connects two sentences together.
Wow.
Which creates an impact. Because me saying but and me saying but creates two very different responses, which then leads into another moment. So if I want to create huge suspense, I want to leave with a but, and I want a little bit of a pause. If I want to be like, but it went wrong, you get very different reactions to it. And so that's just out caring. Most people would just either not try and connect those sentences together, or they'll just keep the words that are in there. Whereas with me, I'll try and find those filler words and those impact words and really sell them. And so it's out caring everyone else. So that's the first thing. If you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds really simple, and it's something that I do my entire life. Like when Steve treated us one year and we went to Ibiza for a week, and we played football, and we done this thing where we were on a boat, and it was like this surfing thing, but it's on like a motor, and it's sort of like, it's like an electric surfboard, or I don't know what it's called, and I've never done it before, and I was terrified of doing it because like I was like, oh, this looks like one of those things I could die with. And then I got asked to do it, and I always say yes for some reason. And I made the decision, like, well, whilst I'm on this board for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to do everything in my power to try and make sure that I can stand on this board and go through the sea on this electric motorized surfboard. And I ended up doing it. If I done a half marathon and I'd only done one 5K run prior to that
Oh,
in
Jesus.
training, and I could have said no. But when I was doing the half marathon, I was like, right, I'm doing it. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna half-ass it. I'm gonna do it to the best of my ability, and that's something that I've always, for some weird reason, always had in me.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference if you put so much of your energy and care into what you're creating. It will come out. It
Yeah.
will. And it's because you know if it's not quite right, and you will force yourself and you will find a way to make it right for when you release it.
Yeah.
And so my advice to people who are just starting out is focus on the basics. You don't need 8 cameras.
Yeah.
I would have cameras. I very much believe if you're not a video podcast, then you will be swallowed whole very soon.
Okay.
So firstly, get cameras, but you don't need loads of cameras. You don't even need the best cameras. You just need something that's 1080, and pretty much all cameras are now 1080. So you need that. You need good sound. And then after that, just focus on the basics, telling a story, engaging with people. This is stuff you can watch on YouTube or read in books. But like, I've never done a psychology course. I've never spent a lot of money going to film schools or doing things. I've done film at uni, but I learned more outside of uni and I learned more by doing it than I actually learned within uni. And it's because I just self-taught myself. Everything I do is self-taught now. It's, if I won't go on YouTube and like just type in After Effects tutorials, I'll wait until I have an idea, figure out how do I do that, and then I go and try and figure that out, whether it's from trying myself or trying to search on YouTube or TikTok or something like that. And so everything is figure outable. You can figure this out.
Love
it's
that.
Loads of people have podcasts. Loads of people have successful podcasts. A lot of podcasts don't last, and I think part of it is because people might give up too easy, or it's also because they're just not caring enough about the product. If you truly love it, you will figure out how to tell a story. You will figure out what audience wants. You can test this stuff. You can test thumbnails for your YouTube. You can test the topics that you're going on. You can even literally see, if you've got guests on, you can go on and see what that guest has done in the past and how much it's like reflected in the audience, how many views they've had in the past if they've done interviews before. You know, you can find all this stuff out. You just have to outcare everyone else who's not doing that, who's just assuming that, oh, I'll just bring this person on and they'll be great, or I'll just edit this the way how I want to edit it. I'll just leave it to go from A to B, blah blah blah, won't really do much, and then I'll just let it go out. If I care enough that, okay, this chunk is better over here, and I'll move it. If I've learned that by grabbing people in the first 5 seconds works with like an emotional statement, I'm going to try and put an emotional statement at the start. So it's just about out caring people,
the 1%,
the 1%, and then just figuring it out, and everyone can figure it out. Trust me, with me and my brain, if I can figure stuff out, I genuinely believe everyone else can figure it out.
And because you weren't very academic, were you, at school?
No, I mean, I loved stories and I loved entertaining people. Couldn't do maths, weren't great in science, weren't great anything that school says you need to be good in. I wasn't good in. And I sort of had this weird relationship with school where I liked school because it allowed me to be with friends, and I actually got on well with teachers, and I'd have a laugh with teachers because I was cheeky, apparently. But when it came to subjects, I was not very good at the core academic subjects. And because of that, especially when I was in school, it was very much like that you'll fail. If you don't do well in these academic subjects, you'll fail. And when you're growing up, that's quite a huge weight to have on your shoulders, and everything I tried just wasn't working. And it's just I just genuinely believe it's because my brain wasn't interested in maths and science. It just wasn't bringing that information in and retaining it. What it wanted to do was listen to music or tell stories or watch films or read stories, and it just wanted to provoke emotion. I say this so much, but like everything about me was just to try and entertain people and to try and make people happy and to try and create emotions within them that they might not necessarily feel. To me, that's just what I always ended up doing. And so I struggled in school because of that. I then struggled in exams. I also struggled at uni in that, when you'd have teachers and lecturers who literally say, Ant's a really nice guy, but he can't tell his ass from his elbows. When that's your feedback, you do feel a little bit lost, and you do feel like you won't amount to anything. And so I struggled a lot with that, but ultimately, without knowing it, it's led me to a career where I'm loving what I'm doing and I'm having a career. I'm paid to entertain people, I'm paid to tell stories, and so it is doable. You can do it, and you don't have to be the best person in school in order to do something that you love and to actually make a living doing it.
A lot of people that go down the academic route end up in jobs that they hate anyway, because it's just this farce. A lot of it is you need to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, and those are obviously highly respectable careers, but that's not always what people truly want to do. And I was in the corporate world for 10 years, like I was saying to you earlier, and it's only in the last year since I started my business I feel truly fulfilled and so happy to be able to be creative again. And I think when you're a creative person, and when you have, in my case, ADHD, and we spoke about this, maybe you too, and when you are divergent in your thinking, we're creative beings and we need to lean into that, and that is, in my opinion, what leads to a truly fulfilled and happy life. Final question: what advice would you have for people who are struggling in school, like we both were? What would you tell them?
Find things that you think you love doing, and there is a way to make a life out of that. If you love taking photos, you can become a photographer. If you love entertaining people like I've done, you can tell stories. And if you tell stories, you can be an editor, you can be a director, you can be a content creator, you can be a copywriter. There's so many things you can do, but you just find the thing that gets you excited, that gets you energetic and wanting to go. That's something that you just love doing. And don't always feel that you have to go down the path that everyone tells you that you have to go down, because ultimately a lot of the time when they're telling you to go down that path, it's either A, just because it worked for them, B, because they were told to go down that path, or C, it's part of a structure that was made about 50, 60, 70 years ago, which no longer is relevant today. So the chances are that advice is wrong. And ultimately, even if it's not wrong, you'll make your own mistakes doing whatever you're doing anyway. So you might as well do it doing something that you enjoy and doing something that you love, because then the mistakes only lead to lessons. Yeah.
Love that mic drop. I love that. And what an honor, what a privilege. Honestly, it was so good to have you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.